Live Twice, or YOLT as I call it and may call it throughout this video. The final Connery Bond film, at least for now. YOLT is such a fun Bond movie, and one that I cannot wait to talk about. It's got action, Persian cats, villains and their deformities, volcano layers, Bond becoming Japanese though he looks more like Spock. It's got sci-fi, Little Nelly, and quite frankly, directly led to a lot of inspiration for Austin Powers. And for that, I am forever grateful. Those are some of the best comedy films ever made, and much of it is all because of YOLT. But what went into making the fifth James Bond film? Let's deep dive into the production of 1967's You Only Live Twice. While not stated during the end credits of Thunderball, the producers, Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, intended to make On Her Majesty's Secret Service as the next Bond film, a film they had been wanting to make for a while. But alas, Majesties with Connery was never meant to be, and the producers decided to make You Only Live Twice as the fifth Bond film, because Majesties would require searching for snowy locations that were high. Instead of wooing Terrence Young back to the director's chair for this 007 adventure, the producers instead offered directing duties to Lewis Gilbert, who initially turned down the offer. He would later accept after a phone call from Broccoli though, with Broccoli telling Gilbert that you can't give up this job, it's the largest audience in the world. Peter R. Hunt, who was the editor on the previous 4 Bond films and would return to edit YOLT, had long desired the directing job and believed that Gilbert had been contacted by the producers for other work, but they found they had to use him. He would request to direct the film, but was ultimately rejected in favor of Gilbert. Freddie Young replaced Ted Moore as director of photography, as Moore had worked on the previous 4 films, but was unavailable to shoot YOLT due to his commitments on A Man for All Seasons. Gilbert, Young, Broccoli, and Saltzman, and production designer Ken Adam, then went to Japan, spending about 3 weeks scouting and searching for locations. Specter's shore fortress was changed to an inactive volcano, after the team learned that the Japanese do not build castles by the sea. On March 5, 1966, the group was due back from Japan on a flight, but at the last minute canceled in order to attend a ninja demonstration. The flight would eventually crash 25 minutes after takeoff, killing everyone on board. While in Tokyo, the crew found Peter R. Hunt, who had decided to go on holiday after his request to direct the film was declined. However, he was invited to direct the second unit and accepted. Unlike most Bond films where various locations are featured throughout the world, YOLT takes place mostly in one country, and several minutes are devoted to an elaborate Japanese wedding. This was done to keep in line with Fleming's original novel, a novel that had also devoted itself to much of the Japanese culture. Toho Studios, the studio behind many of the Godzilla films, provided sound stages, personnel, and female Japanese stars to the producers. You Only Live Twice became the first James Bond movie to discard much of Fleming's original plot, using only a few characters and locations from the novel as the background for an entirely new story. Part of this was due to having been made before On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but more concrete reasons outweigh that reason. For instance, the first draft of the script was written by Sidney Boehm, and followed very closely to Fleming's novel. The producers then had Harold Jack Bloom come to Japan with them to write a screenplay. His work was ultimately rejected, but many of his contributions were actually acknowledged as he was given an additional story material credit. Among the elements used from his screenplay were the opening with Bond's fake death and burial at sea and the ninja attack. Regular Bond scribe Richard Maibaum was unavailable to pen the script for You Only Live Twice, so Fleming's friend and writer of children's literature, Roald Dahl, was chosen to write the screenplay, despite having no experience writing a screenplay, with the exception of the uncompleted The Bells of Hell Go Ting-a-ling-a-ling. This was the first of 3 Bond screenplays that Maibaum didn't write or co-write. Dahl would go on to say that the novel was hard to adapt, and called it Fleming's worst Bond book, believing it had no plot, and that he could only retain about 4 or 5 of the novel's ideas. On creating the plot, Dahl admitted he didn't know what the hell Bond was going to do, and had only 6 weeks to deliver the first draft of the script after his hiring. Dahl eventually decided on a basic plot similar to Dr. No. His inspiration for the story came from the story of a missing nuclear-armed U.S. Air Force bomber over Spain and by the Soviet Union in the United States' first spacewalks. He was given free rein on his script, aside from adhering to the Bond girl formula, and Bond himself, involving 3 women for Bond to seduce, which included an ally and a henchwoman who both got killed, and the main Bond girl. Dahl filled one of these 3 Bond girl roles with the character of Kissy Suzuki, a character who carried over from the novel, and filled the last 2 Bond girl roles with original characters named Aki and Helga Brandt. Lewis Gilbert was mostly collaborative with Dahl's work on the screenplay. As the writer declared, he not only helped in script conferences, but he had some good ideas and then left you alone, and when you produced the finished thing, he shot it. Other directors have such an ego that they want to rewrite it and put their own dialogue in, and it's usually disastrous. What I admired so much about Lewis Gilbert is that he just took the screenplay and shot it. That's the way to direct. You either trust your writer, or you don't. Sean Connery returned to the role of Bond for the 5th time in as many movies. But, as we started to cover during Thunderball's production, the role started to take its toll on him, and he grew increasingly disenchanted with the role, a sentiment that reared its ugly head while making this film. Connery had stated he was tired of playing Bond and all the commitments attached to the role, as well as finding it difficult to find other work, as he feared he had been typecast. Saltzman and Broccoli enticed Connery to return for this film by increasing his fee for the film, but also geared up to look for his replacement. In the year the film was released, 1967, Connery officially resigned from the role and was not on speaking terms with Broccoli during the production and filming of You Only Live Twice. Jan Vurik, a Czech actor, was originally cast as Bond's arch-nemesis and main villain in the film, Ernst Stavro Blofeld. But upon his arrival at Pinewood, both Broccoli and Gilbert felt he was a poor choice to portray Blofeld, feeling he resembled a poor, benevolent Father Christmas. However, Gilbert was willing to make the casting work, and managed to continue filming. After several days, Vurik was fired from the film, as both Broccoli and Gilbert determined he was not menacing enough, and replaced him with Donald Pleasance. The official excuse for the recast of the character that was given, though, was that Vurik was too ill to play Blofeld, and therefore had to step down from the role. While Blofeld was hinted at in the previous few movies, it would be the first time his face would be seen on screen. Pleasance's interpretation of the character went on to become a dominant staple in pop culture, most notably the character of Dr. Evil in the Austin Powers film series, which was primarily a parody of Blofeld, particularly inspired by the portrayal from Pleasance. Pleasance had many ideas for Blofeld, as it wouldn't be a classic Bond villain if he didn't have some sort of deformity, right? His ideas included a limp, a hump, a beard, and a lame hand before he settled on the facial scar. Pleasance found the makeup of the scar uncomfortable, because of the glue that attached it to his eye. The only other known actor that was in the running for Blofeld was actor Helmut Qualtinger. I am so sorry if I botched that name, as there were no examples to correctly pronunciate it online. Many European models auditioned for the role of Helga Brandt, including German actress Eva Renzi, who ended up passing up the opportunity to play the character. Another German actress, Karin Dorer, was cast as Helga instead, and performed the stunt of Helga falling into the pool of piranhas to depict Helga's demise, all without the use of a stunt double. Dorer's voice was dubbed by a different unknown actress for the film's German release. Actress Tsai Chin played Ling, the Bond girl who helped fake Bond's death during the pre-title sequence of the film. She would then go on to appear in another Bond film later on in the series, all the way in the Craig era, as she portrayed Madame Wu in 2006's Casino Royale. United Artists CEO Bud Ornstein met with Japanese actor Toshiro Mifune of Seven Samurai fame in the Canary Islands to persuade him to take on the role of Bond's Japanese ally Tiger Tanaka, but the iconic actor had already committed to appearing in the film Grand Prix. Gilbert would then choose Tetsuro Tanba for the role of Tiger Tanaka, after having worked with him in The Seventh Dawn. A number of martial arts experts were hired as the ninjas. The two Japanese leads were difficult to cast due to most of the actresses that screen tested speaking little to no English. Akiko Wakabayashi and Mie Hama were cast for the lead roles. Both were Toho stars and both knew little English, so both actresses began taking English classes in the UK. Hama was initially cast as Tanaka's assistant, but due to difficulty with learning and speaking the English languages, the producers were going to fire her. Tamba argued for her and pled her case, claiming she would commit suicide if she was fired from the film, and it was decided that she would switch roles with Wakabayashi, who had been cast as Kissy, as the part of Kissy required less lines of dialogue and less English to be spoken. Wakabayashi agreed to the role switch, on the condition that her character's name of Suki be changed to Aki, which the producers agreed to. Principal photography of You Only Live Twice, shot mostly in Japan, commenced in July 1966 and lasted until March 1967. Filming locations in Japan, and I'm going to botch some of these names, so please excuse my mispronunciation in advance, included Tokyo, the Kobe Docks, Nachi, Himeji Castle, the village of Bonasucho Akime, Shiraz's Shigetomaso Manor, then known as the Ryokan Shigetomaso, the Kagoshima Prefecture, and Mount Shimoadaki in Kyushu. Here is a summary of the filming locations and specific scenes filmed at those locations. In Tokyo, the initial scenes were set in and around the Ginza area. The Hotel New Otani Tokyo served as the outside for Osato Chemicals, and the hotel's gardens were used for scenes of the ninja training. A car chase was also filmed in the Tokyo area, using a Toyota 2000 GT and a Toyota Crown to film a chase around the area of Olympic Stadium, which had previously been used for the 1964 Summer Olympics. Tokyo Tower in the center of Tokyo can briefly be seen in a sequence where the villain's car is dropped in Tokyo Bay. Tanaka's private subway station was filmed at Tokyo Metro's Nakashimboshi's station, and a sumo wrestling match was filmed at Tokyo Sumo Hall, which has since been demolished. In Kobe, Kobe Docks was used as a filming location for the sequence in which Bond investigates the ship Ningpo and then gets in a fight, while Bond's wedding was filmed at Shinto Shrine in Nachi. Himeji Castle in Hyogo Prefecture was used as Tanaka's training camp. Bonasucho Akime was a village used as a filming location for where Bond and his wife lived, and where the Ama scenes were shot. The manor, now known as Shimizaku Shigetomaso Manor, was used as the exterior of Tanaka's house. Kagoshima Prefecture was used as the location for various scenes depicting Little Nelly, which we will talk about more in a minute. Mount Shinmoadaki in Kyushu was used as the exteriors of Spectre's headquarters. Most of the interiors were filmed at Pinewood Studios. Aside from that, the film's opening sequence that takes place in Hong Kong used some location footage shot on a street in Kowloon. Hong Kong's Victoria Harbor was also used for filming, but Bond's burial at sea and the retrieval of his body was filmed off Gibraltar in the Bahamas. The scenes with the light aircraft transporting Bond to his supposed death was shot over Buckinghamshire in the countryside of said location, which doubled for Japan, as Japan was the location in the finished film. Because the production team decided on Japan for a filming location, the film gathered a sense of notoriety with the Japanese locals. Large crowds in Japan gathered to see filming, but sometimes things got a bit out of control. At one point, one fan followed Sean Connery with a camera, and police had to deal with fan incursions during shooting. The heavily armed WA-116 autogyro named Little Nelly was included in the film after production designer Ken Adam listened to a radio interview with its inventor, Ken Wallace. Little Nelly was named after music star Nellie Wallace, who had a similar sounding name to the inventor of the gyrocopter. Wallace teamed up with John Sears' special effects team to bring Little Nelly to life on the big screen, as he piloted Little Nelly himself. However, the action sequence involving Little Nelly proved to be difficult to film. The scenes were initially shot in Miyazaki, first with takes of the gyrocopter, with more than 85 takeoffs, 5 hours of recorded flight time, and multiple instances of Wallace nearly crashing the vehicle into a camera used for filming. A scene filming the helicopters from above created a major downdraft, and the cameraman's foot ended up being severed by the craft's rotor. While his foot was stitched back together by doctors visiting the country, it did have to be amputated upon the return to London after the surgery was deemed to have been flawed. The cameraman, John Jordan, would continue to work on the Bond series with a prosthetic foot. The concluding shots of the sequence involved explosions, which the Japanese government did not allow in a national park, forcing the production team to film the climactic explosions of the sequence in Torremolinos, Spain, mostly because the town was found to have resembled the Japanese landscape. Spectre's volcano base was filmed at Pinewood Studios for a cost of $1 million, and included an operating heliport and monorail. This volcano set cost almost as much as the entirety of Dr. No's budget. The set was so large it could be seen from 3 miles away. Locations outside of Japan include the Royal Navy frigate HMS Tenby, then Gibraltar, then Hong Kong for the scene where Bond faces death, and Norway for the Soviet radar station. Diane Salento, Connery's then wife, performed the swimming scenes for at least 5 different Japanese actresses, including Mie Hama. Don F. Drager was a double for Connery, and also provided martial arts training. Lewis Gilbert's regular editor, Thelma Connell, was originally hired to edit the film, but her initial cut, which ran almost 3 hours, received a negative response from test audiences, and so Peter R. Hunt was asked to re-edit the film. Due to his editing work on this film, and the fact his cut received a much more positive response, he was awarded the director's chair on the next film in the series. You Only Live Twice was the last Bond film to make extensive use of voice dubbing. In most of this movie and in the previous 4 Bond movies, many of Bond's leading ladies and villains had their voices dubbed by other actors and actresses, a practice that still occurred, but almost rarely, in future Bond movies. Composer John Barry once again returned to score the film, his 4th credited Bond film. The veteran Bond film composer tried to incorporate the elegance of the Oriental sound with Japanese-inspired tracks. Nancy Sinatra was enlisted to sing the title song for the film, titled You Only Live Twice, and was the first non-British vocalist of the series to perform a title song. The song itself was written by Barry and Leslie Bricusse, who was also known for his work on Goldfinger. The music was written by Barry, and the lyrics were written by Bricusse. There was, however, an alternative version of the film's title song. An earlier version, also titled You Only Live Twice, had a similar arrangement and lyrics but had a different melody and did not feature the distinctive cascading strings the final version does. This version was performed by Julie Rogers and was included on the James Bond 30th Anniversary 2-CD box set and was credited as a demo. Rogers, however, did not consider her version of the song a demo and referred to it as the finished version to be featured in the film. It's not known why her version of the song wasn't used. I would assume it was because it didn't have the signature strings to give it a more oriental feeling, but that's just my own speculation. Only 2 lines from this version were kept in the final version of the song heard in the film. After the Rogers version of the song was re-recorded, the producers contacted Nancy Sinatra, and John Barry reorchestrated the song to fit her range. Another version of this final arrangement was actually recorded with singer Lorraine Chandler that also went unused, and in another alternate version, Nancy Sinatra recorded another version of her final cut of the song for Reprise Records that would be dubbed the chart version. This was arranged by guitarist Billy Strange, who had also covered many of the James Bond instrumental themes. Lee Hazelwood, known for his collaborations with Sinatra in the 60s and 70s, felt Barry's lush instrumental backing was not suitable for a chart single. On the Reprise version, Sinatra's voice is double-tracked, which means she was singing along with the already pre-recorded version of the song in order to produce a stronger and bigger sound, which gave this version of the song not only an unusual sound, but a pun on the title. There are, of course, many different cover versions of the song performed over the years that I won't get into here, but my god, that has got to be the most recorded versions of a Bond song I have ever heard of, at least up to this point anyway. The soundtrack was recorded at CTS Studios in London and debuted on the top 40 of the Billboard 200 album chart in August 1967 and charted as high as 27. A big part of the marketing tactic involved using Japan itself, as United Artists produced a 1-hour color television program titled Welcome to Japan, Mr. Bond, which first aired on June 2nd, 1967 on NBC in the United States. Bond regulars Lois Maxwell and Desmond Llewellyn appeared, respectively playing their roles from the film series Miss Moneypenny and Q. British actress Kate O'Mara also appeared in the special, playing a special assistant to Moneypenny. The program showed clips of You Only Live Twice and the then 4 released Bond films, and contained a storyline of Moneypenny trying to establish the identity of Bond's bride. You Only Live Twice premiered on June 12, 1967 in Leicester Square at the Odeon, with none other than Queen Elizabeth II in attendance. The following day, the film opened in both the UK and the US, and set an opening day record at the Odeon in Leicester Square, and went on to debut at number 1 in the US with a weekend gross of $600,000. It grossed $7 million from 161 theaters in the U.S. in its first 3 weeks, and was number 1 for 7 weeks, grossing $43 million in the U.S. alone and $68 million worldwide. Contemporary reviews were positive, but also mixed as well. Roger Ebert awarded the film 2.5 stars out of 4, feeling the movie was too heavy with gadgets and weak on plot, considering it, alongside Thunderball, as one of the series' weakest entries. Charles Champlain of the LA Times called it a no-holds-barred piece of nonsense. Reviews are still tepid to this day, but remain on the positive side, mostly. Rotten Tomatoes has the film holding a 74% approval rating from critics, with the critical consensus stating, with exotic locales, impressive special effects, and a worthy central villain, You Only Live Twice overcomes a messy and implausible story to deliver another memorable early Bond flick. For me, this is easily the most entertaining of the Connery Bonds. It's not the best, don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. But this one is jam-packed full of action, a lot of action, especially for 1967, and a lot more than the previous installments. The Little Nelly sequence remains one of my favorite action sequences of the entire series. I love Tiger Tanaka, and Donald Pleasance as Blofeld is definitely a charm, despite how messy the story is. Japan is also a great location, and showcasing much of Japan is a delight. But it's not all fun and games. Connery looks bored to death, the story beats of Bond becoming Japanese feel outdated, and Aki is a much better Bond girl than Kissy, and it's a shame when Aki dies, because that nearly derails the whole thing. It's still very entertaining though, and I could easily pop this one on when I need to kill a couple of hours, or have it as ambient background noise and pay attention here and there and still know what's happening. It's a messy, but yet fun ride, and I think a slightly underrated Bond flick. Leagues better than Thunderball if you ask me. So, there you have it. That's Yolt. We have made it through the Connery era. Well, for now at least. Connery will take a break, shall we say, for the next one. And honestly, as much as I am dreading talking about my own opinion of On Her Majesty's Secret Service towards the end of that video, since it has seen a lot of reappraisal and is considered a Bond classic now, and I don't feel it is, it will be interesting to talk about, and it will definitely be interesting to talk about the actor who played Bond only once. See you soon for the production history of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. This is Q Branch, signing off.